So now that we're ready to combine all this and pack it together, what I'm going to basically do is just take these and attach. Let me unhide everything. Temporarily attach some of these things. I'm not going to have the bullet on the same template. I'm going to give that its own material. So now, once it's attached all together, I can hit it with the unwrap. Open the UV editor, move that into view, and basically this is going to be a little tough. I'm going to try to keep what I'm doing in view here. I don't have a lot of space to work with. If I hit this with a checker pattern, first thing you'll notice, if you're noticing, is that the size of the squares here is much larger than the ones here, and that's because these were packed into their own templates separately. Now that's one of the things that's just kind of inherent in what goes on. Now if you're using Max 2012, there's a very handy feature called rescale elements, and what that does is that rescales everything to take up the same amount of landscape in your template, and that is a very good thing. We are now having the same exact resolution across every face just with one click of a button. If you didn't have that, you'd probably have to go in and grab all the bits manually by element or something, and then scale your template up and down to basically fix it by yourself. So Max 2012 is a huge proponent of this program, at least for unwrapping. So I'm going to do is an automatic packing here with a padding of 0.005. I'm going to let it rotate, and I'm going to say pack normalize. And what that's going to do, I don't need to really see my model now, is hide my map and just take a look and see what kind of things can I tie together and get out of the way. Really what I need to do is, if I make sure I'm on select by element, what I need to do is I need to get the things that are breaching up here moved into the rest here, tied into these little cubby holes and things like that. I want to pack it as much as I can away from the top and the right, and in clearing that space I can then scale my UVs up farther. So that's my goal, is to do that. So now I really need to see where I can start rearranging things, keeping in mind that I need to maintain some padding. This is going to be a 4096, however, like I said, because I'm going to be giving you guys a Photoshop file. It's up to you which one you want to use. You can scale it down to be, say, a 1024 if you want, and you know, go a little low res. If you wanted to go down to a 256 for say like a real-time strategy game, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So I'm just going to move some of this stuff out of the way. There is not an awful lot of let me hit A so I can angle snap that guy. There's not a ton that I can do to make this better, but there is some work that I can do. Wow, it's really fighting me. And to get this packed in a little nicer and fill in some of these gaps that I don't need, which will free me up to basically increase the overall size of this guy so that I can get more usage out of it. Take some of these guys here, these slightly smaller elements, and what I can do is I can say pack together, and what Max 2012 has is this pack together feature, which is nice because it doesn't rescale anything. It just moves it together for you so that it's kind of all bunched into the same spot. You can manage it better instead of having to drag things around yourself. Just kind of a way to somewhat organize what you're doing. I'm just trying to fill in some spots. Usually need to take a double pass at this, set it up what I think is okay, and then just keep playing with it a little bit here and there. I do tend to spend quite a bit of time doing this because it's so important. You can see I'm already starting to clear my right side. Then I need to clear my top, and that will give me the ability to scale it up some. So the bigger everything is on this template, the more pixels that part of the texture is picking up, and the sharper and better that the texture looks. So we want to make sure that this goes well. You can see I'm pretty clear now. I could probably clear it a little bit more just by lining some of these little bits and pieces here into some of these smaller little cubby holes that are in here. Not sure how much I'm going to be able to repair or get out of having a big old bad boy like that. Those big pieces are harder to work with than the little pieces. Little pieces can almost always be tucked somewhere, whereas big pieces just kind of, they're so big you gotta tuck everything around them, not them fitting around other stuff. So I can probably get that in there. Could probably get that over there just for now. That can easily fit in there. This can go horizontal and fit in there. This big old long piece can actually be broken. Control D. I am a huge fan of hotkeys. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I try to mention every single hotkey that I use when I hit it. And the same thing here. I don't want to be on element because I just want to hit this, and Control D breaks it off of that. I'm going to try to find a nice home for this, which I need a long wide opening, and here's one, I think, right in there. So I can take this one out of there, stick it right there. Okay. Something got doubled up here, where my packing algorithm kind of failed. Now let me try to detect what that is on the model. I just had to move that off. If I go here by element, move this out of the way, and pick it here, sorry. Hard for me to see that when I'm not showing you guys. Let me see what's all going on here. It looks like it's just that part of the gun, so I'm actually a little confused. Ah, I never broke that. So what I can do is actually clear my selection over here on the model. If you're working in full screen, you got a decent monitor, it goes 1920 or whatever, you got a lot more space to work with here than I do. You can see now I was able to isolate that guy, and just Control D, and I can move it someplace else, which allows me to bring that down. Now aside from this beast, which I might be able to get in here if I can give these guys a new home. So I can definitely go down here. Get that guy out of the way. Let's get this guy out of the way. See, it's the way that this kind of works is it's always just like one fix leads to another fix, leads to another fix, and you get sidetracked and you kind of go, okay, well if I get this out of the way, I need to get that out of the way, and then I got to get this out of the way, and then I got to get that out of the way before you're finally done. Okay, so I'm going to fit, some of this stuff back in, and other pieces here because I can't go much farther south than there, at least right now. Like I said, and take a second look at it. Can probably fit this little bit Tetris style right there. Just put that there for now. Keeping in mind padding is very important to maintain, and you can see that's everything. And already I can increase my resolution some over what Max was able to figure out on its first try. Now what I like to do is say, okay, well, if I take a look here, you can see that I'm hitting the right side before I'm hitting the top, which means if I can tuck in a little bit on this side by moving some of these guys in, at least the most extreme elements that are on the right, which would be this guy, if I can relocate him, I can get even more. As minor as it may be of a increase in size, it is nonetheless an increase in size, which is more atlas space for me to see. And now I'm pretty even here to go up even higher, and you can see where I'm going with this, hopefully. And like I said, I'm just going to start tightening everything up and rearranging things here and there and spacing them out. And I'm going to record for just a couple more minutes, but I'm not going to record the whole process because it's A, boring, 2, a little mindless, 3, it doesn't take any explanation. Like I said, this is puzzle work. You need to get this stuff in here as close as you can to each other without going too close, and obviously without overlapping. Cannot overlap. But you also don't want to be right on the edge like that either, because if I paint this, that pixel padding is going to hit this piece, and if I paint this piece, pixel padding will hit this piece, and no matter which piece I try to fix, I'm going to be messing up the other one, and it gets to be frustrating. And I've made that mistake numerous times, and it's frustrating to have to go back, because sometimes you don't notice where your padding is broken until you actually get to the part of your painting where you actually address that part, and then you realize you've done so much else, and then you've got to do all this rearranging of everything sometimes to fix it, and every once in a while you'll find yourself scrapping your texture altogether. You have to start over because you didn't plan it that well, and that happens. It's not something to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge over, but it is frustrating, and it does slow you down. And if you are in a production environment, say you have a boss, he's expecting something done, or you have a project that you have to get done, taking that time to plan out in the early part goes miles towards getting the project actually done on time. Not doing stuff over and over again is probably the fastest way to avoid getting something done. I mean, not doing it over and over again is the fastest way to get something done. Doing it over and over again is the worst thing you can do in any project. Doesn't matter what it is. Starting from scratch is bad bad news. So I'm looking here and I'm seeing a little bit tight. I'm losing a little padding, so fix that. I'm at the 15-minute mark here. I said I was going to record for about 3 more minutes, so that's about this mark here. And I'm going to keep trying to come in farther down as I come in from the side. And then, just to show you, I'm going to do, when I am done, let's just say I'm done, I got a little more space again, see? As the more I work, the better off I am, so it's worth it. Got to remember, though, that this guy is right in that template corner. I can't hit these edges because the tiling of the texture. The thing is say if I'm painting this in Mudbox, and this was right on the edge, this edge equals this edge. So if I had something here that was all the way to the side, something here that was all the way to the side, it's exactly the same thing as two items that are just simply too close to each other. If these were butted up against each other, it's the exact same thing as this butted up against the side and this butted up against the side. It's going to draw over. It's going to paint over. I got to stay away from here. I need at least 1 or 2 pixels worth of space there to pad out and not cross over that tiling seam. And then the very last step, just so you know, is once I've got, say I can't make any more size whatsoever, this is when I go in and I start trying to just space everything out as much as possible. In whatever amount of negative space I have, I will usually just start centering things in that negative space, and that gets me safer in my padding. Okay, some things come in automatically to you know, far enough away where I can safely tie that up. You know, I got a good couple pixels in there. Again, if I'm painting a 256 texture, then I don't really have a lot of pixels in between these small distances. There's not a lot of pixels in the whole texture, so there's not a lot I can do. But I am going to be painting a 4096, which is the largest texture that you pretty much want to use in a game environment. Not that it isn't possible to have the 8000 size texture, but those are what I like to call system killers. They won't run very well at all on even a relatively decent machine, unless somebody spent, you know, $3,000-4,000 within the last 3-4 months, which is how quick the the computing industry upgrades in general. Usually, I think the rule of thumb is, I forget, it's like 6 weeks you got until whatever you got's outdated. Unless somebody's got a really good system, they're not going to be able to run a game, that's just chock full of 8,000 pixel textures. It's too much. But 4096 is a lot of games these days. They use all 4096. I don't know what the specs are on every game, but I looked through some of the textures on a game like Skyrim, and that, I believe, actually had an 8,000, or I know that when I looked at the player skin, which was surprisingly awful, to be honest with you. It was not very detailed. It was actually fuzzy and not a lot going on. It could have, with all that texture space, wow, they could have had them looking really photoreal, and the insane thing is how good they do look with what they actually did. So it's not always about the amount of detail that you add, as much as it can be the actual details that you add. Form over function. A stick figure can look better than a full-blown painting if the full-blown painting is all messed up and the stick figure's perfect. You know, it's a lot less going on in it, but still looks better because it's not messed up. You know, so that's pretty much why I'm giving everybody the option of going with the 4096 or not. I am not going to be using that in my project. I'm going to be down-resing it to 2048, but you are more than welcome to use it if you, like I said, if you donate to our project. We make all this available. If you don't, you get the basic low res. I might provide you with a 512 or a 1024 of the texture on the low res version of the Glock, which is not the low res version that I started the model with. It's gonna be cut down from this high res version, so that all this unwrapping is just going to lose segments. Okay, all these segments are just going to go, and it's going to I'm just going to paint the high res guy, and then texture will line up on this low res one already. Okay, so I am now going to pause the video, continue with my little management here for a couple more minutes. Fortunately, I'm actually very close. There's not a lot more I can do. There really isn't. I cannot pack this in much tighter without really just losing my edge padding that I so desperately need. So, okay. And it's just going to look like I basically didn't stop at all, but I'll probably end up being zoomed out here or something. So here we go. Okay, so I'm back. This is what I came up with. I spent roughly another 10, maybe 15 minutes on it, and there's more I could do, but really it's very tight in here. And what I did wasn't anything special. It's not rocket surgery, okay? It's just moving things around. And again, I'm just trying to maintain a good padding, okay? Make sure I'm even and even and even, and just see that I don't get too close to the edge here, which I'm okay because I got a couple pixels. If I needed to be even safer, I could just say, hey, now I got a huge safety net there. But let me actually. Now I did work full screen at 1920, just made it a little easier for me. But this is actually pretty good. I mean, there's not a lot of negative space. It looks mostly red. Just make sure I don't have any padding problems, which I don't. Okay. I did rearrange quite a bit of stuff, but there's not much more I can do to really improve this, except just kind of improving my spacing, but I'm not going to get much more landscape out of it. This is breaching, I can't look at the tightness all the way down. That's one thing you can always check. It's like, well, if I could bring this in, well, let me look down the line. Well, yeah, I got some space running down here. I could take all this stuff here and move it over a little bit, but really getting dangerous there, stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is quite gladly call this done. So I'm just going to convert it to editable poly straight out of the edit UVW window by using my hotkey. Okay, and I'm going to show this in solid view, and I'm going to come up to here, and I have going to make a checkerboard just so I can see. It's called checker here. And a tip I like to give when making a checkerboard is the first thing you want to do is pull your black away from black and pull your white away from white and keep kind of a subtle tonal difference. Otherwise your eyeballs and actually might even get damaged. It just hurts to do that. And really what I want to do is just kind of hit it with a big tiling. Can't keep that tiling when I go to export this because it'll actually transpose that into UDK. But you can see that my unwrap, maybe if I darken this a little bit, might be easier to see in this video. My unwrap is good. I'm going to go 50-50. Okay, it looks all busted and broken and angled and stuff, but that doesn't make any difference. I'm going to be painting all my details right on the model. So this unwrap is actually pretty good. I'm quite happy with it. Now what I can do is I can go through and detach some of my other bits that I wanted to keep attached or detached. For instance, the slide. Okay, it needs to take the barrel, needs to take the sights. Doesn't want to really take anything else, so just detach that as my slide. Now let me take this trigger here and say center. I think what happened is it didn't actually detach the trigger. Let me hit H and see what. I ended up naming the whole thing as trigger. Okay, so with that selected, I'm just going to hit detach. Make sure it doesn't say detach to element because that will keep it in the object. Okay, and then I can call this grip. So I got my trigger, my grip, and my slide. And let's get my mag. And I believe those are the pieces I want to have separate. If I take my slide and I move it back, chick, 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 break yourself before I cock my 45 on you and put my gun in your face. Okay, so what I'm going to do for the slide is just going to center that. This one, I'm going to actually put the pivot at 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 in the world. The pivot for the trigger, oops, I'm going to center to that. I'm going to look at it in the front view here, which is actually the side, and I'm going to stick that about there. Now I'm not going to be animating the object itself. I'm going to be animating bones, but placing the pivot of the object where you want it to be is excellent for aligning the bones later. Okay? Need to make sure that goes. Okay. I actually need to undo until that goes back to straight. I don't want to. Now I'm going to center the pivot. Okay. Because I moved that back, didn't move it into a good spot, so that's going to go about there, and that'll make the trigger move like that. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this here for now, and I'm going to try to align this angle to match perpendicular to that slide, so that if I take this guy and tell it to use a local coordinate like you should be used to in UDK, you should see I can now slide it out. However, you do notice Oh, I realized I never cut the hole out of the bottom of the gun. That's not good. You notice how it's moving forward, which means my angle is off. If you see right here, and I slide it up and down, how I'm not going dead down that line. And there is kind of a trick that I can use to get that to work. Basically, I'm going to take one of these edges that is in line, okay, and I'm going to create shape from selection. And I'm just going to call this guideline. Make it linear. Okay. If I hide this, you can see I'm left with this guideline. And what I can do is go to the rendering and enable it in the viewport. Give it some hefty thickness. And now what I can do is I can draw a cylinder on auto grid. Oh, I have to convert it to editable poly before that will work. Sorry. Okay, it's all flat there. Alright. Now I can delete my guide, unhide my mag, go to my pivot, effect pivot only, Alt A, and align it to this, and not do any position, just do the axis. Okay. I should be able to delete that, and hopefully, not guaranteed, if I now move this in local, if you look here, it's pretty perfect. It doesn't move in and out at all. So now I can align a bone to that, and I am happy. I am good to go. So that's a quick trick for aligning something if you've lost already the gizmo. The gizmo's pointing straight up, something's at a weird angle. Try to find an edge or a face or something that is at that right angle, and then auto grid a new object like a cylinder off of it, and then you can align to that guy. And keeping an edge, you can turn that into a spline and render that and use that guy. So just a single edge will get you where you want to be if you do it right. Okay. Z up. Okay, now I'm going to unfreeze all. I'm going to delete that plane. And I'm going to go do a save as underscore just going to call that UDK. I'm going to call it static underscore UDK. What I need to do is I'm going to take everything here minus the gun. I'm going to use my link tool, and I'm just going to link all that stuff. You can see rubber bands drawing to all of them to the gun. Okay. Then I'm going to take the gun, and I want this gun to face down my x-axis, which is here. If I show my grid, you can see I'm pointing the wrong way. And all I got to do is just move this guy, and everything else is going to follow with it. I want to stay on angle. Okay, then I can take everything and unlink it. Now what I can do is take everything minus the mag, because I don't want to do that again, and I can just say under pivot here, reset over here, reset transform. And I might as well hit reset scale. You can see now that if I go to view here, this is not showing rotation. However, this guy is at 20.49, which should be pretty much 20.5, but it's not exact or anything in a good increment. This guy's 0. Okay, if I use my scale tool, everything should read out 100%. Scale is in percentage. Okay, so I'm all baked down and flat. Now, one of the first things I'm going to do is I need to run a scale test on this guy, and that's why I'm making this a static I need to make sure that this gun's not super huge and that my character's standing right here and this gun is just like the, towering over him. Need to make sure it's the right size for his hand. And I've got those hands, arm base here, that I showed you earlier that we're going to use for the tutorial, that I will also make available, though I don't expect too many people to want to use it because it's not your character. If you have a character that has bare arms and happens to have this kind of musculature and things like that, by all means use it. However, if you just have a generic human character, or if it's just basically a humanoid, you can take this and by all means morph it into whatever you want. The mesh flow is pretty good. It's not great, but it'll animate okay. When I rig this, the fingers will bend okay. Okay, if you just look at this for free and don't feel like taking the time to donate, you can pretty much just grab this low-res cage and use it for whatever you want. If you do donate, I will make available to you this high-res one, which will also come with high-res textures, which will be similar to these, what's going on here now, but this is not final. This was just me getting something on there to test the unwrap for the most part, and it is symmetrical. So if you wanted the left arm to be different, you're going to need to edit that yourself. However, these will be available. So I'm going to need to make sure that the gun is going to fit in these hands. And before I do that, I need to make sure these arms aren't the arms of a giant or a gnat. I got to make sure that these are a good size too, and the scale that I'm going after is about the same as the stock UDK character, the male or the robot, the Landry robot. Okay, I'm going to match that before I go any further. And the reason is because when we do go to actually put bones on these, once the skin modifier and the bones are on there, it's you can no longer scale. While you can scale in UDK, set your draw scale, it's best to have that remain at 1 and keep it even. That way, if you do need to edit it later, there's always a base, kind of scale that you can go back to that looks okay. It can be sometimes that the arms look just really huge in your first-person view, and that can be due to multiple factors. Could be the size of the mesh, could be its distance to the camera, its position, could be your FOV settings, and things like that. All that stuff needs to be balanced out to make sure that the gun looks good, or that the arms and the gun look good. So the first order of business when I come back will be to scale the arms okay, and then to scale the gun okay. And then once that's happened, to be honest with you, this is ready to rig, and then once it's rigged, it's going to be ready to animate. And the gun rig itself is very simple. I only need 4 bones. I need one for that bullet. Okay, I got to make sure that I can take that bullet and move it in and out of the mag so I can hide it and unhide it to make it look like the mag's empty and not empty. Again, this shell is the particle that's going to come flipping out of the shell ejection port, which is going to be a different area, which I'm not going to cover. I may make the particle effect, but Paul will be handling how that actually works in his side of the tutorial, which is the scripting side, and that will be very valuable information for those of you who haven't done any of this before and want to know how to get your gun in from scratch and actually working. The one thing that we're not going to cover right now is the third-person character, because it was not because we couldn't do it, but mostly because how do we decide on what kind of character to really use for the tutorial. I mean, we could use a naked human, but or it could be, you know, your basic battlefield military man, but we don't, not sure, you know, spending that amount of time would be really worth the effort. Whereas we know for pretty much almost every single case, those of you who are interested in this kind of thing will want to have your own character built for your game. That's kind of one of the custom parts of any video game, is the characters, right? So if our response for these videos is enough, and there's enough requests and things like that, we certainly can go in and handle the 3-player side of it, and I can make, you know, some basic generic type of character that, you know, whether or not we make that character available or not, but at least go over the principles and practices of rigging them and animating them, getting them working, and making sure that all the anim sets and anim trees and fizz assets and all the work that goes into this stuff is covered. So be kind of an all-in-one tutorial. But we're going to gauge how interest is on just doing the 1-player side of things first. And again, we do want to provide reward for those who help us out by making all of these assets themselves available. You also get, I believe you're going to get access to all the source code, which is going to be great. You can just pretty much plug and play, worst case scenario, but maybe have to cut and paste or copy and paste it in. This, you're going to get, not only are you going to get the max file, you'll get the PSK and PSA. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to mention. I'm not going to be doing FBX. I don't like to use FBX that well. I find it has a lot of problems. I love Actor X and the PSK, PSA system. I find it easy to manage and easy to work with, and it's great. So I'm going to be using that. That may or may not get phased out in the future. If it does, you just have to really export it as SBX. None of the workflow and practices are going to change except for that particular part of it, which would be exporting and importing into UDK. So we're done with the model. We're done with the unwrap. I am going to paint this outside in a separate video and make that available. And the next part of this video, aside from that speed painting, will be the animation preparation stage, which is basically everything I've already covered. So I'll just go through it as I do it, and we'll be good to go. So again, if you got this far, congratulations. And if you've never done it before, you should pat yourself on the back, because this is, even though it's simple, it wasn't that simple. It's quite a complex model, and I personally think it looks just fine. I don't think anybody's going to complain about it. And one last thing I'd like to mention is that for those who donate and that you get this mesh, try to keep in mind, if you kind of on the fence, think about how much these assets can cost you in both time and in actual cash. You may be able to find a free Glock online, but a lot of times those have copyright issues where they're not going to allow you to use it in a commercial product. This will not. If you donate, you will be able to use it in whatever you want. You can sell your game. We're not going to ask for anything. No credits, anything. Don't care. Just take it, use it. It is yours once we provide it to you. And keep in mind that an asset of this quality and polygon count, and considering that it'll be unwrapped, textured with multiple textures and all of these different options, can actually cost anywhere from $50 to $150 if you were to try to buy something like this online. And we're really only asking for about $5 if you can bring yourself to do it. We do need help with our project to keep it moving forward. So there you go, and I will see you in the next part. And there it is. I don't have anything else to say.